Welcome, friends, to the Brisbane New Church Community Palm Sunday message. The message is entitled, Avoiding Unnecessary Suffering Through Remnants Work, or Thriving Instead of Just Surviving. Let's begin with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen. Is it possible to always thrive in life? Does life have to be a series of struggles, one after the other? Today I'm going to answer those questions in this message, and the answers themselves are both exciting and urgent. They're exciting because you can always thrive in life, especially through a relationship with the Lord. And I'm not saying that you won't have troubles or spiritual battles. In fact, you're guaranteed to have more spiritual battles simply because you are in an active relationship with the Lord. However, each and every battle will make you thrive even more. And the length of each battle will be drastically shortened by having a living practice of drawing upon the Lord's strength instead of our own strength. These messages and the answers to them are also urgent, because if we don't have a thriving relationship with the Lord, then we will struggle to stay on the spiritual path. In fact, it's essential for our spiritual walk that we learn how to thrive. And I'm going to give you 3 methods today, 3 techniques to strengthen your connection to the divine. And these 3 techniques are something that you can do or should do every day if possible. So let me begin by showing you from the scriptures what is one of the most important aspects of our spiritual walk, and that is how to stay connected to the Lord and thrive. Reading from John 7:37-39. In that day, that great day of the feast, Jesus stood and cried, saying, If any man thirst, let him come unto me and drink. He that believes on me, as the scriptures have said, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water. But this spake he of the Spirit which they that believe on him should receive. Now notice here that it's rivers of living water. Not just a river, but it's rivers of living water. Let's go to Psalm 1. Blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that brings forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doth shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind driveth away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. Again, I want to draw your attention to the fact that we're told that we will become a tree planted by rivers of water. We're also not going to fade. Our leaf shall stay green, and we will continue to bring forth fruit in its season. But the key to this Psalm 1 is that the individual is meditating on the Lord's word day and night. Now, every young soul warrior or disciple of the Lord should be learning to connect with rivers of living waters inside them. And yet, many older believers who've known the Lord for many years still don't know how to connect to the Lord in that way. So where are we going wrong here? When Israel first came out of slavery in Egypt, one of the first places that they stopped in the wilderness was an oasis where they could get water. Later on, we read about God instructing Moses to strike a rock, and water would come out of the rock and Israel could drink. We can read in the New Testament where Paul says that rock that followed them is Christ. In other words, Christ is our rock, our living waters. What we're doing here is we're forgetting to come to the Lord for his help. Now in Matthew 11:28-30, it tells us, "Come to me, all ye who are weary and burdened, for I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Now, this passage, "Come unto me, all you who are weary and burdened," I think of this as the great exchange between the individual soul and the divine. We bring our weary burdens to him, and in exchange, he gives us peace and he gives us rest. How beautiful is that? I call this great exchange remnants work. What is remnants work? I'm currently working on a book called Sacred 7, which describes how each one of us has 7 core soul drives. You can't escape these drives. They're always at work in our life, and they're placed there by the Lord to help lead us to heaven. That is, provided we're not ignoring them or abusing them. They're actually revealed to us in symbolic and archetypal language in the 7 days of the creation story that's mentioned in Genesis 1. It's on day 5 where we learn about doing remnants work. And what we're doing here is we're cultivating the new earth, that new earth that comes up in day 3 work. So on day 5, we are creating powerful connections with the Lord through remnants work. And that's what filling the earth with fish and birds is all about. When we're doing this remnants work, we are strengthening the very way in which our soul can touch the divine and be rejuvenated. So before I go into the 3 practical keys or ways in which you can practice remnant works, let me just show you from Swedenborg's spiritual writings exactly what remnants are. Secrets of Heaven 561, we read about remnants and how they're added to us. But what are remnants? Not only the goods and truths which one has learned from the word of the Lord from early childhood onwards, and so has imprinted in his memory, but also all resulting states, such as states of innocence from early childhood, states of love towards parents, brothers and sisters, teachers and friends, states of charity towards the neighbour, and also of compassion on the poor and needy. In short, all states involving good and truth. These states, together with the goods and truth that have been imprinted in the memory, are called remnants, which the Lord preserves with a person and stores away in one's internal being, though the person is not at all directly conscious of this. Now notice that these remnants are being stored in our memories, deep within us, and we're going to learn to tap into those. The Lord's going to bring those up at different moments in our day and in our life. Now reading from Secrets of Heaven 468, where remnants are described as being essential to our very survival. If the Lord did not preserve remnants with each individual, we would inevitably perish in eternal death, for those remnants contain spiritual and celestial life. And moving on to Secrets of Heaven 1906, where we're told that remnants are spiritual and celestial affections. They're actually placed deep inside us by angels or by the Lord. What remnants are has been stated previously. That is to say, they are all the states of affection for good and truth conferred by the Lord on a person from earliest childhood right through to life's end. These states are stored away with a person. The more remnants one acquires, therefore, during one's lifetime, or the more good and truth one acquires, the happier and more beautiful the rest of one state seem to be when they actually return. So I'm now going to talk about 3 ways for you to do remnants work. 3 ways to connect back to the Lord and to drink deeply of the rivers of living water that are inside you, that are there waiting for you to draw upon. These 3 keys are, quickly, meditation, reflection and prayer, and reconnection. So let's begin with meditation. In James 4:8, it says, "Draw nigh unto God, and he will draw nigh unto you." So when we talk about meditation, I'm not necessarily talking about closing your eyes and sitting silently and concentrating on your breathing. There's nothing wrong with that kind of practice, and it helps us be mindful. But the meditation that I'm referring to is focusing in on the Lord. It could be that you're sitting down during the day and you're meditating on sacred text. You're deliberately doing a meditative reading. In this kind of meditation, I want to encourage you to let the truth of sacred text roll around in your mind. Think upon truths, reflect upon them, let their dimension unfold for you. Meditate on truths. This kind of meditation also involves a kind of centering on yourself. I'll explain what I mean. Allowing your awareness to withdraw a little from your body so that you're being more of an observer. Now, the actual practice of being an observer is brought up in day 2 processes of the creation story. But it begins a little bit in day 1, where there's a sudden burst of light. We're starting to acknowledge the Lord. So by withdrawing your consciousness a little bit from your body, you can begin to sense the presence of the Lord within you. You're learning to ground yourself in His presence. It'll come in the form of a deep but subtle peace that will begin to wash over you. And if you practice this several times a day, the more you practice drinking from living waters, the easier it is to center your soul and to increase the peace manifesting inside you. You're learning to sense the presence of God. And this piece is very important for day 4 work, where we're learning to be guided by the Lord. I find that centering my soul on the Lord is easiest when I'm in nature. But often, if there's no opportunity for that, I will just look up at the blue sky and I'll focus in on white clouds if there be any. And you might say, Darren, it sounds a little weird or strange. But I want you to remember that the Lord is symbolically coming in the clouds. And in sacred text, in the Lord's very own words, in Luke 21:28, we read, "And when these things begin to come to pass, then look up, lift up your head, for your redemption draws nigh." Now, the second key, reflection and prayer. Prayer can take various forms, but one particular form of prayer that I want to draw your attention to is how the Lord often went away to pray. In Luke 5:15 and 16 we read, "But so much more went there a fame abroad of him, and great multitudes came together to hear and to be healed by him of their infirmities. And he withdrew himself into the wilderness and prayed." Now, many times in the Gospels we read about the Lord going up into a mountain to pray. He'd separate himself from the busyness of life. And I hope you can see how this kind of retreating to somewhere beautiful, a place of nature or something, ties in with meditation beautifully. The second key, it's all about managing your states, about managing your environment. You could place sacred text around your room, up on the wall, and I would encourage you to change them regularly so they don't become too familiar. Now, the third key is reconnection itself. It's the very core of Remnants work. It's where you're actively drinking from the rivers of living water. In Jeremiah 2:13 we read, "For my people have committed 2 evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and they have hewed out cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water." So 2 things here that the Lord is mentioning to us. We've neglected him. We've moved away from him as the very fountain of living waters. And instead, we've got these clay pots, these cisterns, broken cisterns that can't hold water. Now, the cisterns here in this passage are things that we turn to in times of trouble, but they're things that we think can soothe our pains, but they can't, because they contain no living water. Now, this third method, or key, reconnecting, it's more subtle than the previous two, and it builds on them. For example, I'll have moments during most days where a gentle thought or feeling will flow through my mind. It often feels like a vague or faint memory, as if the memory itself belonged to someone else and I was allowed to share in that memory. An example is I might see a faint image of a little cottage surrounded by hills with cattle grazing on it. When these kind of thoughts or feelings are drifting through my consciousness, if I'm careful to focus in on them, if I can focus in on these little heavenly intrusions, then I'm suddenly flooded with a powerful, positive moment. And that moment borders on joy and ecstasy. But it can be very easy to miss these kind of moments, these little remnants that are bubbling up. So I encourage you to start looking for them. Be aware, sense these thoughts and feelings that are coming up in you and give them energy and attention so that you too can reconnect, you can center your soul, and you can reflect and meditate on the Lord. So here's your spiritual assignment. 1, daily building your meditation practices, focusing in on spiritual truths and the Lord. 2, manage your environment to help you remember the Lord. And 3, practice experience remnant moments. Focus in on subtle delights that are breezing across your consciousness. Let's pray. Lord, at times we forsake you, we forget you. We don't turn to you as we should, but you are love, you are mercy, and you are grace itself. You gently remind us that you're there waiting for us, ready to give us a drink of living water. Help us in our days, Lord, to remember to come to you, to focus on you, to sense your love and to sense your peace. Help us to center on you, Lord, and help us to reconnect. Amen. The Lord bless you. The Lord keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you